It's time for the Chicago Bears. Their draft was headlined by Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, and well, Velus Jones Jr. Guys, Velus Jones Jr. Now, I see the way you're looking. I see the way you're looking at me. I didn't know who Velus Jones Jr. was before this draft. And I know you knew who Velus Jones Jr. was before this draft. And a lot of people, like myself, look at it like, okay, who the hell is Velus Jones Jr.? But you know who he is. So tell us why Bears fans should be okay with drafting Velus Jones Jr.
Well, number one, let me be very, very clear. Bears fans should not be okay. They should not be okay for drafting Velus Jones Jr., but not for the reasons that you think. Not because Velus Jones Jr. is not a good receiver, not because Velus Jones Jr. can't play the game of football. Look at this guy's 5'11", 200 pounds, blazing speed, 4'3" guy. He can separate, smooth route runner, knows how to get into space. Very, very good player. The problem is you have Justin Fields at quarterback. And you're bringing in a guy who's damn near 75 years old already. This guy, Velus Jones Jr., has been in college football forever, since 2016. He's been in college football as long as Ezekiel Elliott has been in the NFL. Does that make sense? No, because we're already saying Zeke is washed up. The fact of the matter is there were other guys. There were other needs for the Chicago Bears to go out and address the wide receiver position that maybe are just better players. It's not that Velus Jones can't play. He's going to have to come in and now start. And I think that's the problem. Byron Pringle, arrested. Equanimous St. Brown. Darnell Mooney is the only guy there that they really have. So you're going to be asking a lot of a Velus Jones Jr. Maybe a guy like a Justin Fields can stretch the field and get him some deep balls. I just thought there were other players in the third round that they could have addressed. Obviously there was a position of need. I graded him the highest. I gave him a B because I actually do like the player. He wasn't highly productive in college. He only had, a few games where he actually was useful. He was a punt returner and kick returner. He did those kind of things. This is a guy who had 62 catches, 800 yards his final year. Not overly impressive, but he's also played football a really long time. So that could be a benefit to some people. I just didn't think that the Chicago Bears were in a position to draft this much of a flyer. I thought they needed to go for somebody that was more of a sure thing. I thought maybe they could move up and go after a guy like a George Pickens, somebody that I thought would fit nicely on the other side of a Darnell Mooney. And they just didn't do that. So it's not about Velus Jones Jr. Maybe he'll be good. I hope he does good. This is about the Chicago Bears not really addressing a position and supporting Justin Fields the way I feel like he needs to be supported, especially after drafting two defensive players first.
Yeah. And you look at the wide receivers that went out. I mean, they took the Kyler Gordon pick is what it is. And it's a good pick. He could be a good player. But you talk about, we talk about on the show all the time about surrounding your franchise quarterback with the necessary tools around him to be able to succeed or give him the best chance to succeed. You go out and get him his weapons. And you look at the draft, they took Kyler Gordon with the 39th pick. After that, you see Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie, you see George Pickens, Alec Pierce, Sky Moore. I mean, these aren't guys like it's so that Velus Jones pick, you said perfectly. This is a flyer. If you go and you get a George Pickens or a John Mechie or a Sky Moore or Wan'Dale Robinson in that second round, it's okay to take that flyer on a Velus Jones later on. But when you look at my grades here, and I like the Kyler Gordon pick. I'm pretty sure you both gave that an A. All my grades from Velus Jones up, or basically all my grades for Chicago was judged basically on the fact that they didn't take a wide receiver. So I'm like, okay, why is this not a weapon or help for a Justin Fields? So that Kyler Gordon pick could have easily been an A, but it should have been a wide receiver. Jaquan Brisker, one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in this draft class. He only got an A, is obviously good, but that should have been an A plus because he's arguably the best safety in this class. But you're still not helping your future. That's what it is to me, and it's hard to judge the Bears draft based off of what they did without helping Justin Fields. AJ.
As usual, I was just the nicest one to them, and I tried to look for a reason to give them some happiness. I really liked their first 2 picks. I could have gone with the D like you did for Velus Jones, but the fact is they needed a receiver. They didn't take the right one, in my opinion. I mean, this would have been a perfect spot to grab a Jalen Tolbert. Even that makes you feel a little bit better. Again, we don't know how these players are going to react in the NFL or what their talent is going to lend to a team. If I'm the Chicago Bears, though, I address fixing my offensive line, getting a younger defense in there. They started well with the Kyler Gordon and the Jaquan Brisker, 2 great picks. Get me some more tackles. Get me some more guards. Give Justin Fields the time. So when he's scrambling, it's because of instinct, not because he's running for his life. Let him be a weapon with his feet instead of just trying to survive. So I think the Bears just kind of they attacked some depth when it comes to that. You know, they got Zachary Thomas in the 6th round. They got Ja'Tyre Carter in the 7th round. They did get a few offensive linemen, but they went complete depth with it. And to me personally, I don't think you were in a spot where your offensive line was solid enough where you're like, well, we'll let these guys train them for the future. I think you need to get some big hitters that can make a day one impact on that offensive line so you could give Justin Fields the best chance, and they just didn't do that.
Yeah, but did it put them? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You can finish.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was just you mentioned the offensive line depth. They lost offensive line pieces, and then they waited until, the middle to late rounds of the draft to address them. And then the fact that, to me, this is about Matt Eberflus. This is a defensive-minded coach you bring in to coach your squad, who you just spent a franchise-changing draft pick on Justin Fields. This goes to everything we talk about with Jacksonville, bringing in a Doug Peterson, with I know they don't have it in with the Jets, but they do have an offensive coordinator who came from the same system where Robert Saleh did, and they brought that kind of offense that they already had under Shanahan over with the Jets. This is a franchise setting their franchise quarterback up for success. I don't know who's running the offense now in Chicago. There's no what is Justin Fields gaining from drafting a Kyler Gordon, from drafting a Jaquan Brisker? These are great players, and I think they're going to be good. But how are you setting your team up for success when you're wasting the best years of Justin Fields, which is the first 3 or 4 years, which everybody knows it's the most important time for a young quarterback. Most teams are trying to win during that time because that's when you can spend the most money before you have to pay that franchise guy. So although I'm not knocking Matt Eberflus or what he's going to be as a head coach or his picks in Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, because those are good picks in my opinion, I don't think you go any direction other than helping your star quarterback or your franchise quarterback if you're the Bears in that situation. You can't win with Equanimeous St. Brown, Byron Pringle, Darnell Mooney, and now Velus Jones. You stack that receiving corps up against any other receiving corps in the NFL and tell me where they stand, because I would venture to guess it's probably at the bottom.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It is pretty gross. Now, let's see if the Chicago Bears had the worst draft in the NFC North. Let's take an overall look here at the NFC North final GPAs. And you have Green Bay at 3.49 as the second best, though, behind the Detroit Lions at 3.54. The worst, of course, being the Chicago Bears, unfortunately for Bears fans, at 2.72. And the Minnesota Vikings coming in at 3.19. Thoughts on those overall GPAs, gentlemen? AJ?
Just interested in the direction you decided to go with.
I was like, okay, well, like I brought up the Packers at 3.49, but it was the second best behind the Detroit Lions, and I was like, the worst though. Yeah, it's just I don't know.
Look, I don't know. We're gonna run into a situation here in the next year or so where I'm either gonna be on here celebrating my win for saying that Justin Fields is not going to be a good NFL quarterback. And the sad part is it's probably not even going to be his fault. But, this is what I said it, it had to do with Ohio State and all that. You look at him, you see flashes, but there's a chance that 2 years from now, we're like, hey, the Bears are looking for a new quarterback because Justin Fields can't get it done. And we're going to say he's a bust. Everybody's going to say, oh, he didn't live up to the hype. And it's probably not going to be his fault, which is a lot for me saying, because I never thought that he was going to be that good in the first place and all that. But I can't blame him right now. What they're doing in Chicago is just not helping him. Hopefully Eberflus gets it done, but it doesn't look promising right now. Darnell Mooney's your best receiver. No knock against him, but that's not a number one.
Nope. Poor Chicago Bears. But the rest of that, I mean, the Detroit Lions, I feel like this is a trend with all of our final GPAs. It's these historically bad teams now just moving in the right directions with 2 straight years of good drafting. You got the Jets, you got the Lions, you got the Jaguars, these teams now just 2 good years in a row with these drafts now going to start pushing themselves into the race, maybe not all the way at the top, but really fighting and getting their names out there and moving up. And then there's the Vikings, and well, yeah,
creepy as hell.
that laugh has taken a dramatic turn, just a drastic just into a different.
I'm looking around for Pennywise, bro.
The NFC Championship game, Minnesota Vikings from 2021.
Oof! And if you don't get that joke, go back and watch. Well,
nope.
Good luck finding it. Good luck finding it. It's from an old brand, but hey,
it's still on Facebook
funny.
Though. It's still
there.
It's still there.
Hey, you have to scroll through all of our Sac City content to find it, which would be nice. You could like, follow, share, click all that stuff too. Right there at the Sac City Pod, you can find it. If you scroll far enough, you might find some RCOD stuff, and you might understand where that laugh came from. And go buy a t-shirt while you're at it while Vinny's throwing up the graphics. Buy a t-shirt, support the brand, because we doing it big, baby.